This week we are going to be talking on finding freedom and joy in recovery and how we go about living a life of freedom and joy. I think to really understand why so many people struggle to find it in recovery is that they actually struggle to understand what their addiction really is, what the illness does to the person, and what we as addicts are kind of poised to live with for most of our existence. For those of you that have been in our addiction disease concept lectures and kind of understood where we come from in terms of what we see addiction as, we really see addiction as being rooted in fear, specifically fear of rejection and abandonment, fear of failure, fear of success. There's a lot of fears. We see it rooted in anxiety, specifically around social anxiety, performance, etc. And we see it in massive amounts of self-doubt, which we can look at in terms of self-esteem and self-worth and those kind of things. So these are the core spiritually rooted genetic predispositions that most addicts carry with them. And as we've discussed, I think in the culture of addiction and all of those other presentations, is that we're often looking for ways to make these things feel better. We're really looking for ways to get these fears and anxieties and doubts that cripple us out of the equation. We're really looking to become free from these elements. And what we find in addiction, obviously, is that when we take the drugs within the culture and the whole setup is that we are almost instantaneously relieved in that moment of these three core conditions. And I think many people entering into recovery expect themselves to get to a point where these three core elements are no longer existing in their life, and so they have an expectation to live in freedom, which in their mind means that I'm living free from fear, living free from doubt, living free from anxiety. And I think being an addict, not being an addict, is really, these three things are common human conditions. I think with the addiction and those that got stuck in addiction, these three things have become the very driving force for why we cannot cope without the substance. And so, I think when we're looking at true freedom and joy when it comes to recovery, when we talk about freedom, it's not the freedom from fear or doubt or anxiety. It's not the freedom from unwanted emotions. It's not the freedom from struggling in social interactions. It's not the freedom from having to face our fears. Freedom in recovery really comes from accepting these three core conditions as a part of us, learning to understand that they don't need to imprison us anymore, because they don't need to trigger a whole series of unhealthy beliefs that we have about ourselves and society. So our freedom in recovery comes from understanding that although I have this fear, I am quite capable to go through the fear and to make choices and decisions and live my life despite of the fear. We find when we overcome that obstacle, when we get to a point of being able to live our lives and make choices despite the fear, the doubt and the anxiety, that we start to experience a truer sense of freedom. We start to experience the ability to understand and comprehend that although we have this fear, doubt and anxiety, that it doesn't make the beliefs that we have about ourselves real, and that the beliefs about ourselves shift into something more healthy. We're starting to see an entirely new, different way of life and existing. So point number one of this video is really to understand, one, if you're expecting freedom to be the result of getting rid of fear, doubt and anxiety, you're never going to be free, because those three things are never going to go away. So your freedom comes in accepting those three things as part of your condition and learning how to go through those things and living your life anyways. The next big thing, specifically around this word freedom, tying into our condition, is if we don't comprehend what our condition actually is, we spend our time in recovery trying to find external things that may make the internal struggles better. So we might focus on the relationship that might give us a sense of love and acceptance and give us the butterflies, and so we pursue this romantic relationship, and initially we feel free and invigorated and excited and life is worth living and somebody finally loves me and all of that stuff that goes with it. We might look for it in a better paying job, because if I can just get some more finance and some more financial freedom, then I wouldn't be fearing so much, I wouldn't be anxious so much, and if I had that promotion, then I wouldn't have to doubt myself so much. So we strive to get the kind of promotion. And then the next thing is, if I have a bigger house and a bigger car, and if I can go on holiday and buy nicer shoes and spend more money, and slowly but surely we keep looking for the external to make ourselves feel better. And so our focus is continuously on getting something more in the attempt to get rid of these internal fears, doubts, and anxieties. What you find, and this is where we become imprisoned again, is what you find in that process is that those three core things never leave. So in our relationship, although originally very, very, very fulfilling and exciting and making me feel good about myself, sooner or later the fear creeps in. Am I going to be rejected? Am I going to be abandoned? Sooner or later the doubt creeps in. Am I good enough? Can I manage this? Does this person really love me? Sooner or later the anxiety creeps in. Same with the job. I get this new job. Am I performing well? Am I going to get fired? Am I meeting the targets? We get more money, and more money comes with more spending, and more spending comes with more responsibility. More responsibility comes with more to lose, and so we go back into the cycle of continuously getting triggered back into a state of fear, doubt, and anxiety. So our attempts to escape these internal core issues are actually things that are leading us back into imprisonment. We can never find freedom if we're chasing external things to take away the internal struggle. We can never find freedom if we never accept point number one, is that those three things are not necessarily going to go away. So if we can accept they're not going to go away, we can stop pursuing external things to try to overcompensate from the internal feelings. And many of you recovering addicts will find yourself getting trapped in these external issues often. And although initially it feels good, the fear, anxiety, and doubt always comes back. When the fear, doubt, anxiety comes back, we have to find the next thing to make ourselves feel a little bit more valuable, a little bit more in control, a little bit less fearful. And so this process of addiction unfolds and unfolds and unfolds until we've really gone through so many different changes in our life, yet we still don't have the feeling of this expected freedom of being rid of fear, doubt, and anxiety. And so the shift for this week is to start to say, right, if I can accept my condition, if I can understand that that condition doesn't make me useless, which is what I normally believe, but I am capable of going through my fears and doubts and anxieties and still achieving, we're starting to find a real sense of freedom in who we actually are, not in a flawed perception of what we believe we are based on what fear tells us, what our anxiety tells us, what our doubt tells us. The next word that we're talking about is joy. Actually quite closely related to freedom, and really trying to concentrate and understand our shift in perception of what freedom actually is. We have the same that's going with joy. So if we're not able to get freedom, we can never find joy. So we've got to know that in order to experience the joy, we've actually got to accept the freedoms. Now, when we start to explore the word joy, we always get drawn into a very specific word, which is kind of gratitude. Gratitude is a perception, a lifestyle. It's actually defined as a state of It's not thankfulness, it's not just an action, it's defined as a state of being or as a quality and readiness of paying back in kind that which has been given to us. And when we really look at our life in recovery and we look at it from a perception of gratitude, and we see where we've come from, we see what we've achieved, we see what we've overcome, we see what we currently have. If we're living in that constant perception of gratitude, knowing that we're in a better place today than we were a year ago, 2 years ago, knowing that we've overcome so much, knowing that if we just look around at the small things in our life, the fixed relationships with the family, the opportunities of work, the new social dynamics, the new kind of outlook on life, the new freedoms of having our choices back and not being trapped in our depressions and cycles of addiction and the mundaneness of life. When we remain in a perception of gratitude of our life, you can see how an outcome of that would be a sense of joy. An outcome of that would be a sense of freedom. And if we maintain that mentality consistently, we're consistently staying in a true state of freedom and joy. Now, perception is an incredibly powerful tool. The way we view our life and the way we view things that have happened in our life really give us the outlook we have on life. Whether we think we're making it or overcoming something or going through challenges to build strength, or whether we see everything negatively and pessimistically and life never goes my way and I'm never going to amount to nothing. The way we choose to perceive what's happening in and around us is highly important in maintaining gratitude, maintaining joy, maintaining freedom. And these are internal things, not external. Not I'm trapped in a job and I hate my work and I hate what life's all about, or oh no, I have to get up and go and do the things that I really don't want to do, and oh, life is so boring and I'm so lonely and I'm so bored and I wish I had more people and I wish I had more this. The perception of what we view our life is fundamentally important in maintaining a true sense of internal freedom and joy. This perception really goes into another psychological theory or premise of internal locus of control versus external locus of control. And I think it's very briefly, I'm not going to go into it in any depth whatsoever, but very briefly, when I have an external locus of control, or I'm living my life from an external locus of control perspective, what's actually happening externally is changing what's going on internally. And so all the bad things happening around me is making me feel bad and hopeless. All my shortcomings and failures and inability to grow is because of the opportunities and the external struggles and society and the people in the world today. Like, we believe that we are controlled by external circumstances. And we can see quite clearly how that external locus of control would not contribute to an experience of internal freedom and joy, because we're continuously living at the mercy of circumstances and people and situations far, far, far beyond our control, which means anytime I feel happiness or joy or peace or whatever the case may be, that's always at risk to something outside of myself changing and robbing me of those things. The opposite of that is an internal locus of control, which means I define what I'm feeling, I define my perceptions, I define how I view the world, I define what my emotions are. And in doing my own internal control, I actually somehow manage the external. So my internal management system is what is creating and managing and facilitating the things that are happening externally to me. And that brings an entirely new perspective on being able to control yourself in difficult situations, being able to navigate difficult situations by adapting and changing your responses, by managing your emotions, etc. This internal locus of control is an extremely important tool to develop for yourself that allows you to maintain the freedom, the gratitude, and the joy as an internal choice rather than an internal byproduct of what's happening or what I'm achieving externally. And so, I know it may have got a little bit complicated. I hope not. We will break it down quite nicely on Thursday evening at 7. Just to recap, finding freedom and joy in recovery really comes down to one, accepting what your addiction is, that you're predisposed with fear, doubt, and anxiety, that is the incurable part of my illness, that those things are conditions that we can easily live with if we don't allow them to trigger the flawed beliefs, and if we don't allow them to paralyze us and enslave us and imprison us into four walls because we're too scared to push the boundaries or step outside of our comfort zone. It's number 2, that we don't try and make ourselves feel better by seeking external progress or relationships or jobs or money or cars or flats or houses or independence, or those things are not going to make us feel better. In fact, those things are going to get us to a position of being even more trapped and going to get us to a position of heightened fear, doubt, and anxiety, and are going to certainly make us more of a prisoner rather than freeing us and giving us joy. The joy comes after accepting all of these things, finding the freedom, managing the perception, maintaining that attitude of gratitude, of looking at the small things that I've accomplished, the small things in life, understanding the milestones and the goals and where I've come from and who's helped me, and being of service and living that life in a constant state of willingness to repay all the good that's been given to you to this point. The opposite of that is self-pity and entitlement and self-centered and woe is me and life never goes my way and I'm so unlucky and if I could only get a job, the negativity. And so maintaining that perception, maintaining that gratitude, that is what keeps us in a state of joyfulness, which is built off of the freedom. So I think it's important, those navigational tools of really coming to terms with you having the internal ability to manage and harness and motivate yourself and your emotions, choose happiness, choose joy, choose gratitude. Those are the things that allow us to live in freedom and allow us to live in joy. So please share the message, please invite other people, please share this post that we will load onto YouTube with those that aren't on Facebook. Anybody and everybody is welcome. We will see you on Zoom at 7 o'clock on Thursday.